You don't feel the collapse when it begins. You sense it. It moves like a shadow behind you long before anyone screams, long before the streets choke with abandoned cars, long before the first roadblock locks the city into a steel coffin. You feel it in the way strangers stop meeting each other's eyes, in the way sirens echo without a pattern, in the way the air changes, thicker, heavier, charged with the kind of fear people pretend not to notice. And then it hits. Fast, hard, without warning. Not from nature, from human pressure, human desperation, human greed. A man-made chokehold sealing every artery of escape until millions of people are trapped in a concrete maze with no exits left. The moment the crowd panics, the city stops being a place. It becomes a weapon. The roads are no longer routes. They are kill zones, funnels that compress you into predictable lines of movement where you can be controlled, blocked, or erased. That's why the majority will die where they stand. They will do what they've been trained to do their entire lives. Follow the road, follow the noise, follow the mass moving toward the illusion of safety. You won't. Because you understand one truth. Survival in a locked city is not about strength. It's about angles, speed, and silence. It's about refusing to act like prey. Right now, you're not escaping a disaster. You're breaking out of a human trap. And there are only 7 ways out. None of them obvious, none of them comfortable. All of them designed to bypass where the masses die and exploit the blind spots no one else sees. You will take those paths. You will move differently. You will think like a ghost slipping through a collapsing world. When all roads are blocked, you don't run, you disappear. And that's where your real escape begins. You begin with erasure, not of documents, not of identity, of presence. Urban disappearance protocol activates the moment you realize the city has shifted from functioning organism to hostile territory. Every movement you make from this point on is either signal or silence, and your only objective is to eliminate the former. You cannot afford to look like someone escaping. Panic has a shape. Fear has a rhythm. The masses broadcast both. You won't. Your posture narrows. Your steps shorten. Your eyes stop scanning wildly and instead lock into a controlled field of observation. You blend, not by hiding, but by becoming visually unremarkable. A shadow among bodies too distracted to notice anything outside their own terror. You avoid the crowd's gravitational pull. Their instinct is to cluster, to rush toward noise, lights, barricades, officials. Those are the places where you cease being an individual and become part of a target group. You break that pattern. You shift laterally, slipping into the edges of movement where no one pays attention. You time each action with precision, moving when they surge, stopping when they freeze, always maintaining a rhythm offset from the collective. This is how ghosts move through chaos, parallel, silent, unseen. Your next threat is artificial perception. Cameras, sensors, elevated vantage points. You treat every lens as an observer with intent. You don't stare at them. You don't dodge them theatrically. You use angles. The human body is a walking blind spot. Tilt your head, shift your profile, let architecture interrupt the line of sight. If a camera rotates, you pause, disguised as static background. In a collapsing city, the system scanning you may be crippled, but the people watching it are desperate, jumpy, and looking for patterns. Do not be one. You move during the moments when attention is fractured, when a fight erupts, when a car alarm blares, when the crowd surges in panic. These are your windows. You step through them without hesitation. Every second counts, but none can look rushed. Your movements must appear inevitable, routine, almost boring. Disappear first. Evacuate second. That is the doctrine. You are no longer a person escaping a city. You are the absence no one notices leaving. You abandon the idea of roads. Roads are for control, for prediction, for hurting the obedient and the unprepared. In a lockdown city, every major route becomes a pressure trap, wide enough to invite you in, narrow enough to crush you once you commit. That is why the micro-route extraction exists. The discipline of carving a path through the cracks instead of the corridors. You are no longer navigating a city. You are navigating the spaces between the city. Your first shift is mental. You stop thinking in terms of streets and start thinking in terms of structures. Walls, alleys, stairwells, gaps behind shops, utility corridors, service tunnels, loading docks, half-finished constructions, drainage channels, maintenance paths. These are not obstacles. These are arteries the untrained eye never sees. Most people are conditioned to look forward. You look sideways. You trace routes that don't exist on maps, but are etched into the physical skeleton of the urban landscape. If a street is blocked, you go around it. If the detour is blocked, you go under it. If beneath is sealed, you go above it. Your path is never straight, but it is always moving forward. You read the environment like a combat grid. A narrow alley means concealment. A shoulder-wide gap between buildings means a bypass. A construction tarp is a temporary wall waiting to be slipped under. Every trash-filled corridor behind restaurants becomes a shielded lane. Noise is your cover. Shadow is your ally. Tight space is your advantage. The masses fear confinement. You weaponize it. Small spaces filter out threats because they limit how many can follow you. Do not rush. You study flow. The crowd moves like water, dense, heavy, predictable. You move like smoke, slipping through fractures, never colliding, never noticed. When you reach a dead end, you don't turn back. You assess. Most dead ends are illusions. Broken fences, removable panels, low walls you can vault, drain passages you can crouch through. The world built for convenience collapses under pressure. The world built for function remains intact. You exploit the functional world. You avoid lighting. You favor irregular surfaces. You stay close to walls, not to hide, but to reduce angles of exposure. Every corner is approached diagonally, ready to break line of sight instantly. You listen more than you look. Footsteps, echoes, engine idles, shouts. Sound gives away bottlenecks before you see them. The city is bleeding. The roads are dead. But the micro-routes, those veins of forgotten space, are still alive, still open, still yours to claim. And if you follow them with discipline, precision, and cold logic, the city won't cage you. It will guide you out through the cracks it never meant to reveal. You stop thinking in two dimensions. Horizontal escape is for the predictable, for the desperate, for the ones who still believe the streets owe them a way out. In a locked city, every route on the ground becomes a battlefield. Visible, exposed, compressed. The vertical escape strategy removes you from that battlefield entirely. You ascend or descend into layers of the city the average person never considers, and because they never consider them, no one guards them correctly. Your first elevation is awareness. Every building around you is a doorway, every rooftop a bridge, every stairwell a hidden artery. Height changes perspective, compresses observation fields, and fractures pursuit patterns. When you move vertically, you force anyone hunting you to change terrain, speed, posture, and angle. Most won't. They're trained to search streets, not skylines. They're prepared to block roads, not roofs. You approach each building with calculation. Glass walls reflect movement. Avoid them unless they offer a blind corner behind a column. Older structures have thicker walls, deeper shadows, and often unmonitored fire escapes. Newer structures rely on electronics, keypads, magnetic locks, cameras that may be dead, dying, or monitored by someone overwhelmed and inattentive. You exploit whichever failure comes first. Stairwells are your quiet corridors. Most people avoid them, choosing elevators out of habit. Elevators are traps. Sound, light, confinement, total predictability. Stairwells, by contrast, are acoustically reliable. You hear anyone coming long before they see you. If someone enters below, you ascend. If they enter above, you descend. You always maintain the escape triangle. Upward, downward, sideways, never locked to one direction. Rooftops transform the city into a network of connected islands. Distance between buildings is often less than it appears when viewed from the ground. A service ladder, a maintenance platform, a narrow parapet, a duct assembly, these become your bridges. You don't sprint. Speed draws attention. You move with controlled intent, keeping your center of gravity low, using every obstacle as cover. From above, you monitor street patterns, patrol cycles, choke points, and potential breaches. Information becomes altitude's second gift. Descending is equally powerful. Parking structures, basements, sublevels, utility rooms, all neglected, all underused. You find pathways that stitch together the underbelly of the city. Steam tunnels, maintenance shafts, delivery corridors. You don't linger. Airflow, temperature, vibration, all indicators of activity. You adapt and push forward. Vertical escape is not about climbing. It's about shifting the battlefield until it no longer belongs to your enemy. When the streets are closed, and the crowds are panicked, and every horizontal route becomes a dead end, you step off their plane of existence. You rise above it. You slip beneath it. You move through a dimension they are too conditioned, too frantic, or too blind to detect. The city is a labyrinth, but only for those who refuse to change elevation. You won't make that mistake. You enter the conflict zones with a single objective: to pass through them without triggering attention, suspicion, or aggression. This is cloaked transit. The discipline of moving through hostile terrain as a non-entity, a presence so diluted that no one assigns you threat, value, or purpose. In a city collapsing under pressure, identity becomes liability. Recognition becomes danger. Standing out becomes fatal. Your survival depends on becoming the kind of person no one remembers seeing. You begin by stripping away your tells: posture, pace, expression. Fear exposes you. Determination exposes you. Urgency exposes you. You neutralize everything. Your gait becomes average. Your face goes blank. Your eyes stop broadcasting intent. They track without signaling. You mirror the local energy of the environment, not the panic of the fleeing. When conflict rises ahead, you slow. When tension thickens, you drift sideways. You never confront aggression. You never challenge dominance. You never become the focal point of anyone's attention span. Your clothing must match the zone you pass through. If the district is industrial, you adopt the fatigue of a night shift worker. If it's a commercial strip, you wear the quiet anonymity of someone ending their day, not escaping their life. You don't disguise yourself theatrically. No hoods, no masks, nothing that screams concealment. Instead, you use the same principle predators use in the wild. Blend into the background noise. You become part of the environment's texture, not its narrative. Two opposing factions, whether gangs, security forces, or desperate groups, create a corridor of unpredictable behavior. You navigate that corridor by controlling your perceived worth. High-value targets get intercepted, threatening targets get neutralized, out-of-place wanderers get questioned. But someone who looks exactly like they belong, tired, numb, unimportant, passes through the fractures between the two sides. You must radiate this one message. I'm nothing you want. I'm nothing you fear. I'm nothing worth noticing. Noise becomes your ally. Gunshots, shouting, engine revs. Each spike in chaos is a smokescreen. When attention shifts outward, you move inward. When a confrontation holds eyes in one direction, you slip the opposite. You operate on the 2-second rule. The moment people look away, you cross their line of sight before they look back. Hesitation kills that window. Discipline widens it. You never stare at armed individuals. You never react to tension. Your presence must be passive but controlled, aware but unprovocative. If approached, you respond with the calm indifference of someone with nothing to hide. Short replies, neutral gestures, no sudden movements, no explanations unless demanded. Your goal is to avoid escalation, not win an interaction. Passing through conflict isn't about dominance. It's about invisibility. You are not a threat. You are not a prize. You are the invisible traveler slipping between the jaws of the trap while it bites down on everyone else. You don't fight your way through. You ghost your way through. You reach the perimeter of the city's interior barriers and understand a truth most never accept. When every official exit is sealed, your escape depends on finding the flaw, not the fight. Improvised barrier breach isn't about force. It's about precision, reading weaknesses, and exploiting structural vulnerabilities without raising alarms. You're not breaking out. You're slipping through. You start by assessing the barrier itself. Every blockade, whether metal, concrete, wire, vehicle, or improvised debris, was built in haste or stress. That means flaws, stress points, gaps, angles where human oversight failed. You don't look at the barrier as an object. You look at it as a chain of components, and every chain has a weakest link. Your job is to identify it before anyone realizes you're studying it. Concrete walls look solid, but their bases often leave crawlable space where ground erosion or rushed placement creates gaps. Metal fences flex. Tension points can be lifted or shifted with controlled leverage. Wire barriers sag where installers cut corners or worked in a hurry. Vehicle blockades create blind triangles between bumpers, axles, and uneven terrain. Triangles big enough for someone disciplined enough to go low, stay silent, and move with deliberate slowness. You avoid tools that draw attention. No loud metal strikes, no sparks, no brute forcing. Instead, you use improvised leverage, a piece of rebar as a silent pry, a chunk of wood wrapped in cloth to mute pressure, a jack from an abandoned car to create a quiet opening millimeter by millimeter. Slow work doesn't attract eyes. Sudden sound does. Survival is measured in decibels and seconds. Before breaching, you scan the environment. Patrol rhythm, sound cycles, visibility arcs, shadow coverage. A barrier is never guarded evenly. One side always has a blind pocket, created by poor lighting, obstructed angles, or overlapping distractions. You wait for the moment when attention fractures naturally. A patrol arguing, a radio crackling, a vehicle passing, a distant commotion drawing eyes away. That is when you move. Not before, never after. You keep your breathing shallow, your silhouette minimized, your body pressed close to the barrier to merge with its shape. Anything separated from the environment is detectable. Anything fused into it vanishes. You slide through the smallest gap, not with speed, but with precision. Speed scrapes metal, kicks debris, catches fabric. Precision glides through. Once you cross, you don't stand. You don't look back. You melt immediately into the next shadow, the next obstruction, the next piece of environmental cover. Anyone who breaches and then hesitates becomes a silhouette. Visible, targetable, dead. You continue moving with the same ghost logic, parallel to lines of sight, perpendicular to noise, always inside the blind spaces. Most people see a barrier and think blocked. You see a barrier and think unfinished. That difference is what keeps you alive. You reach the moment when the land-based escape lanes collapse entirely, and the city becomes a sealed chamber of concrete, steel, and human desperation. This is where most survivors break, because they only think in terms of streets, sidewalks, and pathways made for feet or wheels. But you're not escaping like the masses. You're operating on a different wavelength, and that's where the waterline escape method becomes your advantage. The discipline of using the city's hidden aquatic arteries to bypass every blockade built for ground-level control. You begin by identifying the water sources that run beneath or around the city. Rivers, canals, drainage ditches, culverts, stormwater channels, sewer outflows, irrigation paths. These waterways are ignored during crises because they are uncomfortable, dirty, unpredictable, and psychologically repellent. That makes them perfect for someone who values survival over comfort. Control forces rarely guard them effectively. They underestimate them, misunderstand their routes, or assume no one is desperate or disciplined enough to use them. You move toward the waterline using indirect routes, keeping low, avoiding open banks where silhouettes betray movement. Water distorts sound and light. You exploit both. You approach silently, listening to flow patterns. Steady flow means clear passage. Turbulent flow warns of obstacles. Stagnant pools hint at settling points or gridlocks deeper inside. You avoid reflections. You avoid spotlight exposure. This is not a clean escape. It's a silent one. Entering the water transforms the battlefield. Temperature steals your comfort. Darkness steals your balance. Debris brushes your legs, testing your composure. But none of it breaks your discipline. You keep your breathing controlled, your movements slow, your profile minimal. Splashing draws attention. Gliding does not. You travel beside the water when depth allows. You move through it only when necessary. Your goal is not speed, it's invisibility. Cities often rely on waterways for drainage and emergency overflow. That means exits, outflows. Tunnels leading beneath roads, beneath blockades, beneath checkpoints. You navigate these choke points by touch and instinct. Smooth walls mean main flow channels. Ribbed surfaces mean culverts. Sudden temperature shifts mean merging routes or nearby external openings. You memorize these cues, using them to orient yourself when visibility collapses. At riverbanks, you avoid bridges. Everyone is a natural checkpoint. Instead, you hug embankments, slip under support structures, or traverse along maintenance ladders and service ledges. If patrols sweep the area, you freeze against the shadowed geometry of the structure, letting the water mask your presence with its constant motion. You don't fight the current. You negotiate with it, riding its pull when it carries you toward escape, resisting only when it threatens to push you toward exposure. As you move farther from the city's core, the water transitions from confinement to freedom. Channels widen, surveillance weakens, patrol frequencies drop. People avoid these zones because they're dirty, cold, and unpredictable. But survival doesn't care about aesthetics, only outcomes. Most survivors try to escape above ground. Some try below. Almost none think to escape through the water. That's why you will make it out. You approach the city's outer ring, the perimeter where the last line of control compresses movement into predictable avenues. This is the point where most escapes fail. Not because the barrier is impenetrable, but because fear makes people reckless. They rush. They expose themselves. They behave like prey in the open. But you're following a different doctrine. Perimeter ghost crossing is not about breaking through the outer line. It's about dissolving through it, slipping past the perimeter so cleanly that no one ever registers your existence. You begin by reducing your signature to near zero. Every sound you make, every silhouette you project, every motion you create must fall beneath the threshold of human attention. The closer you are to the perimeter, the more amplified your mistakes become. A single branch crack, a single misstep, a single glint of light. Any of these can end your escape. So you move as if the air around you is wired with trip alarms, slow, precise, controlled. You break your movement into phases. Glide, pause, listen, evaluate, then glide again. The perimeter is never uniform. Human systems fail at consistency. Floodlights overlap unevenly, leaving pockets of darkness between beams. Patrols develop patterns. Boredom, fatigue, routine. Terrain creates natural distortions. Ditches, brush clusters, drainage embankments, low berms, the shadow lines cast by uneven ground. These aren't obstacles. These are your hiding lanes. You read them like a map written in darkness. You observe patrol rhythms without staring directly at them. Direct eye contact is attention. Indirect vision is data. You measure timing, how long they take to pass one point to the next, when they look down at devices, when they slow, when they speed up, when their focus collapses under monotony. People guarding perimeters rarely expect an approach from oblique angles. They're trained to watch the obvious. You attack the invisible spaces, the angles no one checks, the blind spots created by terrain, the gaps between overlapping responsibility zones. Night air carries sound differently. You use that physics. Soft ground absorbs noise. Hard ground reflects it. You choose your steps based on texture. Leaves crack. Dirt muffles. Grass whispers. Gravel betrays. You adapt with every footfall, shifting your weight to minimize pressure. You breathe through your nose, slow and shallow, so your breath doesn't plume visibly in cold air or hiss in warm air. When you identify your crossing point, you don't rush it. You wait for the perfect fracture in attention. Two patrols overlapping but distracted. A light flicker. A radio transmission drawing eyes away. That tiny window is your passage. You don't sprint. Sprinting creates motion signature. Instead, you move with lethal stillness, almost floating across the danger zone, keeping your body aligned with the darkest geometry of the environment. On the far side, you don't break discipline. Ghosts don't celebrate. You drop into the next shadow immediately, maintaining silence until you're certain you've broken every line of sight. A true escape isn't marked by distance. It's marked by invisibility. And if no one knows you crossed, they cannot hunt you. You didn't outrun the perimeter. You erased yourself from it. Night is not a disguise. Night is a weapon. One most people misuse because they mistake darkness for safety. Darkness doesn't protect you. It exposes the undisciplined. It betrays the ones who move too fast, breathe too loud, or trust shadows they haven't studied. But you've reached the nightfall extraction discipline, and this is where your escape becomes surgical. The city is quieter now, but not safer. At night, sound carries sharper. Movement stands out more. Fear amplifies every mistake. Precision becomes absolute. You begin by recalibrating your senses. Your eyes adapt to gradients, not absolutes. Darkness is never uniform. It comes in layers: black, gray, reflective, broken, soft. You treat it like terrain. Deep shadows can conceal you, but only if you don't silhouette yourself against lighter backgrounds. Mid-level shadows are safer, allowing shape without contrast. Sharp darkness hides edges but destroys depth perception. You compensate by listening more than looking. Every footstep becomes a conversation with the environment, and you make sure every answer is silence. Your pace shifts into the rhythm of predators, short movements, long pauses. You never cross open space without mapping the path twice in your mind, once for obstacles, once for exits. You never break a straight line. Straight lines are patterns. Patterns get caught. Instead, you curve your approach, angling in and out of shadow belts like a controlled drift. Your goal isn't to be unseen, it's to be untrackable. At night, the city breathes differently. Distant sirens stretch longer. Wind funnels through alleys with sharper resonance. A single conversation echoes across blocks. You use that acoustic environment as both warning system and camouflage. When the wind gusts, you move. When a car alarm blares, you shift position. When a stray dog barks, you freeze. Every external noise becomes a metronome dictating your timing. Your silence is not just absence of sound, it is synchronization with the environment. Light becomes your enemy. Street lamps, windows, passing beams from patrol vehicles. Each one creates exposure cones. You don't avoid them blindly. You anticipate their sweep patterns. A rotating light has a rhythm. A passing vehicle has a timing arc. Even handheld flashlights reveal intent by how the beam wobbles or locks. You read these like body language. You move only when light turns away, never when it's about to turn. Humans look before they shine. They reveal themselves before their beam does. Your breathing drops into controlled intervals. Slow inhale through the nose. Longer exhale. This keeps your chest movement minimal, your sound profile non-existent, your mind razor-focused. Fatigue creeps in during night operations, not from exertion, but from vigilance. You don't let it dull your edges. Discipline replaces adrenaline. Calm replaces urgency. Precision replaces speed. This is where untrained survivors break, and you separate yourself from them. Nightfall is not the moment you hide. It's the moment you dominate the environment by refusing to make the mistakes others make. The city's darkness becomes a battlefield, and you move through it as the only combatant who understands the rules. By the time dawn threatens the horizon, you will already be beyond the danger zone. Not because you outran the collapse, but because you mastered the darkness that swallowed everyone else. You didn't use the night to escape. You used the night to become untouchable. The final threshold is the quietest and the most lethal. The zero-noise exit is not about distance. It is about disappearance. At this stage, you are inches from freedom, but those inches are where most escapes fail. Survivors let relief creep in. They breathe too deep. They loosen their posture. They start believing safety is guaranteed simply because danger is behind them. That belief kills them. The last meters are the most dangerous because they demand the highest discipline. Any sound, any light, any movement out of rhythm can pull predators, human or organized, straight to you. Your mindset shifts into absolute minimalism. Every action strips down to necessity. No excess motion, no wasted breath. You treat the environment as if it's wired with trip sensors and microphones. The air feels colder, sharper, tighter around your body because you're aware of how easily it can betray you. Your feet touch the ground like you're negotiating permission to exist. You're not running anymore. You're dissolving into the terrain. Light becomes a sniper. Even the smallest reflection, a buckle, a zipper, a damp patch on fabric, can be detected from a distance. You suppress every possible glint. You keep your body in the shadows cast by terrain shapes, not objects. Objects move, shadows shift, but the dark geometry of hills, embankments, drainage cuts, and tree lines stays consistent. You anchor yourself inside those contours, letting them swallow your outline. Sound discipline becomes survival in its purest form. You neutralize the noise sources most people ignore. Fabric brushing fabric, breathing that hisses between teeth, the crush of soil under too much pressure, the click of a loose strap, the scrape of a fingernail against rough material. Every sound has a profile. Every profile has a killer. You remove them all. Your movements become so slow, they're nearly imperceptible. Slower than fear. Slower than instinct. Slower than thought. Speed is noise. Silence is freedom. You monitor the perimeter behind you without turning your head abruptly. Rotation creates motion signature. Instead, you shift your shoulders slightly, letting peripheral vision handle the rest. You don't assume safety. You confirm absence. The silence around you isn't empty. It's loaded. Predators listen in silence. Guards observe in silence. Only the untrained break silence with movement. You refuse to be one of them. Your final crossing is a glide, not a push. You choose the darkest vector, a crease in the landscape, a dip in the ground, a line of cover that forms naturally, effortlessly. You follow it as if gravity is pulling you forward. When you pass the final boundary, you don't break stance. Don't lift your head. Don't inhale sharply. Celebration is noise. Relief is exposure. Survival demands neither. Only when you have placed true distance between yourself and the city, far enough that no patrol can hear you, far enough that no stray light can catch you, do you allow your breath to deepen. Not because you are safe, but because you have finally completed the one rule that defines escape. Get out without ever being detected leaving. You didn't exit loudly. You didn't exit visibly. You exited perfectly. Escape is not the end. Escape is the beginning of the next threat cycle. Once you clear the city's grip, the world outside is not a sanctuary. It's a frontier of unknown eyes, unknown motives, and unknown dangers. This is the post-escape survival continuum, and it demands the same discipline that carried you through the choke points, shadows, and fractures of the urban kill zone. Most people collapse emotionally the moment they're out. They think distance equals safety. They think silence means security. They think the worst is behind them. That illusion gets them hunted, cornered, reclaimed, or erased. You will not fall into that trap. Your first rule is simple. Never leave a trail. Every step you take must dissolve behind you. Soft ground demands angled footprints, not direct impressions. Gravel requires weight distribution, not heavy planting. Brush demands minimal contact. You erase your presence by moving like someone who expects to be followed, even if you aren't. Complacency is the predator that devours survivors after the city has spared them. You refuse to feed it. Your second rule is counter-tracking. You monitor your rear without broadcasting attention backward. You read the environment for signs of disturbance. Broken stems, displaced soil, pattern inconsistencies. You listen for unnatural repetition. Footsteps that echo yours. breathing that doesn't belong to your lungs, fabric rustling where no wind exists. You treat every sound as data, not threat. Threats ignite fear. Data fuels action. Your third rule is direction control. You don't run blindly into open country or follow natural paths. Paths are highways for the desperate and the dangerous alike. You choose terrain that breaks visibility. Ridges, tree lines, drainage cuts, angled embankments. You move unpredictably, bending your route into patterns no one can anticipate. Zigzags broken by straight runs broken by lateral slides broken by controlled pauses. No rhythm, no pattern, no trail a tracker can sing to himself. If you find shelter, you don't stay long. Shelter is comfort. Comfort makes noise. Noise invites disruption. You rest in short intervals, choosing locations that offer concealment over protection. A sheltered place invites others. A concealed one hides you from them. Your OPSEC doesn't relax once you're outside the city. It intensifies. You speak to no one unless survival forces the interaction. You disclose nothing. You trust nothing that approaches too eagerly, too generously, or too quietly. The collapse has turned people into predators, scavengers, opportunists, and the moment you appear stable, resourceful, or equipped, you become a target of value. You minimize that risk by projecting scarcity, not weakness, just invisibility. When you finally choose a direction to travel long-term, you choose it based on resources, not emotion. Water first, cover second, terrain third. You never follow roads. You never shadow highways. You never gravitate toward noise. The world outside the city is scattered with the remains of those who walk toward the familiar. You stay sharp. You stay cold. You stay untraceable. You didn't escape the city to feel safe. You escaped the city to stay alive. Survival doesn't end at the perimeter. It continues with every breath you choose to take with discipline.